Good afternoon. I am Stephen Leskin, and this is my Divorce Deep Dive webinar series. Tonight's topic is uh, mediation with a narcissist spouse. I get a lot of calls from people who say, we start the conversation with, my spouse is a narcissist. And I think that the reason I get so many calls like that is that it just must be infuriating to live with somebody who carries that kind of diagnosis. Things like depression, you can understand, or, addiction kind of outside, you kind of understand and have some passion for somebody who can't control their drinking or eating or whatever it is. But narcissists, that's a whole different set. That's a personality disorder that invades every pore of a relationship. So I think that's why narcissism in particular uh, generates so many calls and so much interest. So with that, we'll begin, or try to. So the agenda for tonight is I will spend a little bit of time talking about myself. Then we'll get into narcissism, and the two are not connected. Then I'll talk about what comes after understanding narcissism, and then the last chapter is what I call the game. And we'll come up with my golden rule for dealing with people who are so manipulative that you just want to scream. And something The way I start these seminars is with the notation that I don't take questions during the seminar. uh it's just too distracting for me, and then I lose my train of thought, and I'll start talking about who knows what. So I don't take questions during the seminar. But if you want to call me afterwards, if you want to call me at my office, please do. I'm happy to answer questions. If you say you saw the seminar, I'll just be overjoyed to hear from you. The last slide in tonight's series will have my email. You're welcome to email me as well to say that you saw the seminar and you have some questions. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. The seminars are posted on my website, usually within a day or two. The website is leskinlaw.com. There's also what's become a huge resource section there of all of the videos that I'm doing. So there's plenty of things to check out there as well, pertaining to divorce. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm not a narcissist. I don't claim to be a narcissist. I don't want to be a narcissist. I was admitted to practice law in the state of Oregon in September 1992. I immediately opened my own practice. I've been practicing family law since 2001, and doing nothing but family law for the last 10 years or so. I am the founder of One Day Divorce Mediation, and we'll talk about my particular approach to mediation and how it impacts narcissism, or dealing with a narcissist spouse in a little bit. There's my phone number and website, um, if you need to grab them now. All right, so tonight's topic, divorcing the narcissist. And we will take a deep dive, and let's get into it. So let's start with the fundamental question. Let's start at the beginning. What is a narcissist? What exactly is a narcissist? So, um, psychologists, therapists use something called the Diagnostic Services Manual, and that is a listing of all of the mental health illness out there. And DSM um, is what lays out the criteria for each mental illness, and DSM certainly does define narcissism. Uh, Under the DSM, a narcissist is somebody who has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates their achievements and talents, and just puts themselves at the center of the universe. That's a classic narcissist. Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, um, believing that they are special, it can only be understood by other special or high status people. A narcissist requires excessive admiration. Uh, Narcissists will have a sense of entitlement, the ingrained belief that the world revolves around them. Uh, a narcissist clearly takes advantage of other people to achieve his or own ends. I would say that a narcissist generally will not consider um, the needs, feelings, wants of other people unless it's in use of furthering their own ends. And next criteria is exactly that: lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of them, shows arrogant, haughty behavior, attitudes. So um, I struggled for quite some time to come up with somebody I can use as an example. And then I thought about it, I thought about some more. I really just could not come up with a good example of a narcissist. You're just going to have to use your own imaginations to come up with somebody who might fit that definition. Even though I suspect that if you're watching this webinar, that you have a pretty good idea of somebody in mind. All right. So there are narcissism expresses itself differently between men and women. And so we'll get into some of the differences now. So the style of narcissism, males tend to be overt about it, be more grandiose, loud, arrogant, dominant. They'll flaunt their success, look at me, money, power, um, and will seek admiration or approval through their achievements or status, right? So more extroverted, more look at me. Women tend to be associated with more covert or communal narcissism. They may appear more passive or more sweet or more charming on the surface, might seek admiration through their appearance, motherhood, or being the best friend. Guilt or emotional manipulation uh, are used subtly, but they are definitely there in narcissistic women. Different tactics of manipulation in narcissists. Men often narciss will Men often manipulate through control and intimidation or domination. Gaslighting, stonewalling, infidelity, or common taxes are common tax tactics. Excuse me. For those who don't know, gaslighting is trying to convince somebody that history was one way when it was actually another. So a narcissist may try to convince somebody that uh, they didn't pay a bill when they did, or that they didn't go to a restaurant when they did. So a narcissist, for whatever reason, a narcissist will gaslight, meaning they'll attempt to reshape memory or history to suit their own needs. And knowing people who have been in this situation tell me that gaslighting is a horrible undermining tactic. It undermines somebody's confidence in themselves. It undermines their manipulation. It undermines memory. Undermines somebody's self-worth. When those things, like when you start having like so much doubt about the future, and then once you realize you're being gaslit, like once the light bulb goes off that there's an intentional pattern of trying to shape what happened in a relationship, um, that's kind of when people have an epiphany about who their spouse is. Uh, Women may lean more towards emotional guilt, triangulation, or playing the victim. They may use children, social image, or indirect aggression for control. Relationships and image. Let's talk about that. Male narcissists are often obsessed with power and conquest. They'll brag about their sexual exploits or wealth or status to boost their ego and to uh, create that hierarchy that they need in social relationships. Female narcissists are obsessed with beauty, status, being seen as perfect. Uh, they certainly may appear outwardly nourishing or nurturing or well put together, but they'll use that image to control or attempt to control um, your perception of them, and still, in the same sense, create that hierarchy. Maybe it's a hierarchy of beauty or family hierarchy. And so that's the way a female will use relationships and image to boost their own ego or put somebody else down. In family, let's talk about narcissist in family relationships and in a family context. Narcissistic fathers, distant, demanding, critical, hard to form a relationship with, distant, um, and not generally emotionally available for the kids. Narcissistic mothers may be overly enmeshing, overly controlling, uh, or may actually compete with daughters for husband or father's attention. Some other uh, characteristics in relationships, in romantic relationships, males will um, love bombing, intense flattery and gifts as a way of building the relationship, as a way of building status within and dominance in a hierarchy within the relationship. Control starts early. Uh, Look for signs of dictating what somebody wears, who they see, what they do. That's signs of narcissism. Boundary pushing, infidelity. A narcissist will feel entitled to treat because rules don't apply to me, right? So they're outside the rules, or they are at the top of the hierarchy. So rules just don't reach that high up. Talked about gaslighting a little bit. Um, Rages with or cold withdrawals, uh, playing, going from extremes to love bombing to distance is also a way of manipulation. And then combine that with gaslighting, you get a really, really sick dynamic for somebody. Cycles of abuse, love, devalue, discard, just that pattern I was just talking about. Um, Love bombing and then distant, you know, just keeping somebody off balance are all signs of a uh, narcissist. Family dynamics may be emotionally unavailable or authoritarian as a father. I don't think I said that right. Um, Uses children as extension of his ego. The kids are, going to Harvard, therefore, look at me. Often puts family members against each other to maintain control. That process is called triangulation, uh, and will certainly um, deflect blame for family issues to the kids or to the spouse. Um, Female, let's talk about female narcissists in relations and family. Love bombing through nurturing, always appearing caring, supportive, maternal, but will weaponize that. Uh, Very quick to play the victim, even when she's the aggressor. And I've seen this dynamic many times, particularly this this particular dynamic many times in litigation with uh, uh, talking about female narcissists now, uh, creating a narrative without evidence of victimhood. And that's a way of being an aggressor, right? That's like an underhanded aggressive. It's an underhanded aggressive tactic. Guilt tripping and silent treatment, it's emotional manipulation. Triangulation, bringing in third parties against somebody, finding an ally um, to use against another family member. Jealousy and envy, jealousy or envy can be emotionally or socially competitive with a partner, um, especially if especially if there's competition about who's at the top. Family dynamics in terms of family. As a mother may try to mesh with her children, we talked about this a little bit, may see a daughter as competition, not as an individual person, portrays herself as the perfect mom, wife, whatever, while hiding cruelty or manipulation behind closed doors. Again, we're coming back to the theme of how important that image is. The image covers up the manipulation or the cruelty that can exist, and then uses social image as a weapon. Look at all I do for this family, demanding praise and recognition for their status and um, yeah, for their status. I just want to talk about something that I see. Uh, I, um, it's when I've had in my life, um, like I'll get calls from people all day long, and sometimes with men, I'll get a call from somebody who is just overly charming. And it's like, why is this person so charming? Well, it's a manipulation, right? And then you get to know through the course of litigation or mediation, you get to know the spouse and you find out how degrading they are. So there's very very what very deliberate attempt to project one image out to the future, out to the world, but at home behind closed doors, a very very different relationship. I come to be able to spot women who are narcissists. Same thing, very charming. There's always a hint of sexuality, always a image. Uh, I can think of one woman who was a 90s flower child. Very very alluring, but used that. So it was kind of like she used kind of like poison, like would use um, her beauty as the incentive or as the bait and then smack you down. And I've learned to recognize that and frankly run from it. It's scary when it comes up. It is scary. And I'll turn down work rather than work with somebody like that. So I just kind of jumped into the next slide. So we'll talk now about my marriage is falling apart. What's next? So let's get into that. You're realizing that the marriage is no longer viable, that it's taking too much from you. And so the question is, am I so miserable that I'm just going to walk away? Maybe walking away means giving up assets or income, um, or because that's what it's worth to get out of the relationship. Another um, important consideration is how do you keep the kids out of the fight? How do you insulate kids from somebody who can be so awful and manipulative? And is it possible? And so one of the questions is, are you going to fight for custody? Are you going to fight for a parenting plan that protects the child? Is that even possible for you? Maybe it's not financially possible, right? Litigation process is expensive. So maybe you don't have those kind of resources. So um, there are some low income resources around town in Portland, but generally you got to figure that a fight is going to be, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Uh, you may be asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? Two very different questions. Uh, you need to, I'm not telling anybody what they need, but question one is, am I protecting myself? Am I going to be able to be self-sufficient as an adult? What do I want? I want to be free of this person. So then the question is, how do I get what I want, and how do I get what I need? And that's where we'll start transitioning into more legal stuff. So there's three or four different ways to bring about a divorce. One is uncontested divorce, and I'll cover each of these a little bit more. Um, the next would be litigation, which is we all know is uh, one person filing in the court and hiring a lawyer, and the other person filing a response and hiring a lawyer, and then going through discovery, and then going through litigation and a trial. Mediation is the process of going back and forth through a neutral third party to come to a resolution of the conflict. That's mediation. Um, I do my practice is called one day divorce mediation. I don't do mediation in the typical way, and I'll come to that in a little bit and explain my approach to um, conflict resolution in divorce and how it works in context of having a narcissist spouse. All right. So uncontested divorce says we have no differences here. All we need is the divorce decree. And in my view, uh, an uncontested divorce is appropriate when there really is no um, assets, no debt, no kids, where there's details that are going to have to be ironed out. A lot of times people just want an uncontested divorce because they think it's going to be easier. And if it is an uncontested divorce, it will be easier and less expensive. Uh, but it's not always, many times, people who want the uncontested divorce don't understand that if there's things that you are still arguing about it, then it's not uncontested. So uncontested divorce, in my view, strictly in my view, is only appropriate when there's nothing to divide up and all the parties needs is the divorce decree from the court saying you're divorced, you're no longer married, you can remarry. So, for example, if a couple has kids, even if they agree that one of the parents is going to get custody and um, there's still going to be disputes over child support or calculating child support or how child support is going to be paid or parenting time. How are you going to divide the parenting time? And especially if um, you think that there's danger to the child, if one of the spouses thinks that there's danger to the child because of the tendency of the narcissist spouse. So, uncontested divorce in this context, not likely. So, litigation is one person hiring a lawyer, the other person hiring a lawyer, and then going through the court process. And maybe you get a settlement. Maybe you can agree on everything. Maybe you can't. If you can't, then you go to court and the judge decides. Um, Litigation is appropriate when you cannot negotiate with your spouse, you cannot trust the spouse, when you believe that there's been missing assets, when you believe there's debt you don't know about, when you believe that there's income that you don't know about, or when you don't believe that the spouse has the capacity to compromise, right? So typical narcissist is, I'm right, it's my way or the highway. You can't negotiate with that. You cannot negotiate with that. So then your only option really is litigation, attempt to get a attempt to get a meaningful settlement, and if not, then um, going before court where the two lawyers focus on the evidence, get the evidence before the judge, and the judge will decide. Um, I will say something. I live in Portland in Multnomah County, and I'm a happily married guy. I hope never to use the family law department at the courthouse, but it is very good. The judges in general are excellent. As an attorney who's been practicing in the state for many years, I rarely get, I may disagree with a judge, but I rarely, find myself pulling my hair out saying, oh, what was that imbecile thinking? I may disagree with them, but I rarely doubt the intelligence. Uh, I never doubt the intelligence or the integrity of the person who made the ruling. So we're lucky to have a really well qualified, really talented group of judges in Multnomah County. If your case has to go there, the advantage of what I just said in terms of dealing with a narcissist is that a lot of the judges have really, really good insight into family dynamics and personal dynamics in Portland. And they're going to look at the evidence. They're not going to look at the personalities. They're going to look at the evidence that is before them, and they'll make a decision. And that decision um, uh, will will be reflective of what's in the court record, not the posturing of the parties. So most of the judges are very, very good at reading people, in my experience here. And if you have a narcissist and you have the means to get to court and trial, you will, I'm not going to say categorically you're going to get a fair trial, but you'll get the fairest trial. I will say that you will get the fairest trial possible. Okay, so can you negotiate with a narcissist or particularly a narcissist spouse? And um, you can if the mediator is a strong enough person and recognizes the dynamic. And that if you're going to call mediators or you're going to start calling around looking for somebody to help you, you really got to talk through with them so that they don't get bulldozed by a narcissist. So they don't start turning the spouse's arguments against you, right? So you want to make sure that the mediator is emotionally, personally equipped to deal with another strong personality. If not, then you're just wasting your time. You won't get um, you may get a resolution, but it's probably not going to be a resolution that you can rely on. So you can mediate, and with a good mediator who is sensitive to power dynamics and power struggles and hierarchy and relationships and things like that, um, that person may be very well appropriate to bring um, just like what I tell clients, what I want to do is I want to weed out all the personality stuff. It's my job to see that if I'm going back and forth between parties in a marriage, between the spouses, that the personalities stop at the door. So if I'm going between room and room, uh, his personality and her personality don't carry with the um, proposal that somebody's bringing or making, right? So if the question is, what's parenting time going to be? I'm going to weed out, the comments and the, try to boil down to where like the parties have common interests, uh, um, and weed out the things that I know are going to be triggering, even though, I'm not going to know all of that, certainly by an extent. Um, but, pushing back on things like, if there's, um, crazy demands or very particular demands, push back on, because those are signs that somebody's trying to still manipulate somebody else through the process. Push back. Why is that important? Are you sure you want me to bring this to her or him? Um, why, what's the purpose of that? Is it to get to a result or is it to needle somebody through the process? So there are a lot of good a lot of good mediators, a lot of very sensitive, smart mediators out there. Um, Uh, but if you're looking for a mediator, you really got to screen for that. You really got to ask, my spouse is a very strong personality. I feel overwhelmed by it. Is this the right venue for resolving the differences in our marriage? And are you the right person? And if so, why? And what's your experience? And how long have you been doing this? You know, things like that. So you really got to do your homework. Um, it, uh, if you're dealing with somebody who puts themselves at the center of the universe, it may not be possible to negotiate with them, and then in that case, you're stuck with the court process. Um, but um, if they're agreeing to the process, you can, there are ways to get to resolutions. Uh, so I hinted at this earlier. Um, my mediation style is a little bit different from anybody else. I've developed my own style on how I do mediation. I work with people, the way I work with people is I want them to know the law. I want them to understand what Oregon provides in a divorce setting. And that way they have benchmarks for knowing um, it's mediation is about crafting a solution that works for the two of you. But I want people to know that the solution that they're coming with is consistent with Oregon law. So they're going to get a result that's consistent with what other people would get had they gone to trial. If they choose to ignore that, if I say, well, you're entitled to half in this situation, you're entitled to half the assets. Um, if you choose to ignore that, that's fine. I'm not going to second guess that. But because of the way I do my hybrid mediation, if I say um, to people, you're entitled to half, and the other party's not budging, and they can't decide, then my hybrid process makes me the arbitrator. And so I will then impose Oregon law on the parties and say, um, you're both going to come away with half the assets or half the debt or whatever it is. So I'm looking at Oregon law as providing a benchmark so that people have some sense of how to negotiate and what to negotiate towards. And if they don't, and they can't get a resolution, or they do, and they can't get a resolution, excuse me, they have a pretty good sense of what I'm going to do as the arbitrator when I make a decision, and I will do my best to create a situation that to create a result that mirrors what they'd gone had they gone before a judge. And like I've said, I've been doing this for a lot of years. In fact, was a municipal judge for many years. So the the result should be pretty consistent with what somebody would get if they'd gone before a judge in the first place. The advantage is that of that approach is that if you know where the law is and the narcissist party insists, well, you should only get 10% of the assets because I work so hard, you're not entitled to it. You can just say no, 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 we don't agree, and then you know where it's going to come out in the end. All right, I call this the game. Sit tight. All right. So I called this How to Get What You Want. And maybe that's a little bit optimistic, but I just want to share some of um, things that I think of in relationships and how to things that have helped me in the past. And I'll talk about one thing in particular that created a mindset shift uh, that it proved to be very, very valuable and important to me, and something that I use every day of my life. And it's advice that I give to people all the time. So, one thing is to practice removing yourself from the existing dynamic, right? You want to change that dynamic. And one way that I suggest doing is shifting your mindset from participant spouse to observer social worker, right? Start treating yourself as the observer. I want to watch what goes on in the other person. I want to watch what goes on in the relationship. I want to watch what goes on in me and start making those mental notes. Where does conflict arise? Most people have been thinking about this for years, uh, but to start to do it more objectively. Start to do it as you're taking notes like you're a therapist. How does the conflict resolve? What's worked in your favor in the past to resolve conflict? What things do you have to give that resonate with the narcissist spouse to to um, so that he or she sees it as their idea to uh, uh, resolve the conflict. Start treating the relationship as an experiment in thought control. And what I mean by that is um, what I was just saying. Play with what works. Experiment with what works. Try different approaches until you come up with something that starts working to help you get to a place that works for you. And I'm not talking about like mind control or like seducing somebody into giving you everything that you want. We're not talking hypnosis or Jedi mind control. We're talking about just the little things to make it the relationship work better for you. And chances are you've been doing that your whole relationship, but start taking it more um, objectively is probably the best word, more deliberately trying, does this work? Does that work? If it doesn't work, discard it. If it does work, refine it. Um, Something that I've found in my own life is to learn to take a moment of pause so you're not being reactive. When I've been in management positions, sometimes sometimes even now as an attorney, I'll get things that will just piss me off. Right? We all get that. Things that immediately make you angry. And when I start feeling that, like that kind I always take a moment of pause. If it's like a personnel thing with somebody in the office, like I'm not going to deal with that then. I'll take it after the emotion has passed. So I'm being deliberate, not reactive. Learn to take the moment of pause to be deliberate. Don't react. Don't react. Be proactive, right? So you control the pace, you control the narrative. So that's something that's really been beneficial to me in the past, especially when I've had to deal like with personnel, HR stuff in my office. Is I might be mad, anger is not the right way to deal with somebody at all. So, uh, take the moment, right? Or even better, learn not to learn uh, to not become angry. Uh, learn to accept that things are the way they are, and that anger comes from your expectation of what they things are what they are, and anger results from your expectation that they should be different, right? So learn to identify that in yourself, that the anger is within me, and um, I'm not accepting reality for what it is, and that's what's making me angry. So uh, another thing is by start by identifying and testing your spouse's needs and interests, right? So start thinking about, like, if your narcissist spouse needs to be at the top of the world, how can you use that? How can you frame things to satisfy that need, right? And you're probably already doing this, but you want to be thinking about that in terms of, like, um, you know, how do I place myself so that uh, that dynamic is preserved while I get what I need. Um, so, and then lastly, experiment, practice, right? Human relations, take time to learn, and we improve it by doing it. Um, you know, I like using my sense of humor to, like, diffuse situations. And I've done that for years. And the more you do it, the better you get it at it. And, like, that's just learning social skills. But you're trying to learn social skills for a particular person. So experiment and practice. All right, we're coming up to the end, and Leskin's golden rule. So, um, years ago, years and years ago, decades ago, I had an argument with my brother, and I realized that in a moment, I realized that he was just manipulating me or trying to manipulate me, and it worked. I mean, I got really angry, and he knew how to push my buttons to get the response that he wanted. And once that light bulb went off, it was like, "Ugh, you're trying to manipulate me. I'm not giving you that power." And I was in control, and he lost it. And I took that lesson with me through life, that once you realize that somebody's trying to manipulate you, you are in control. So, um, and I get this in my practice. I get people who try to, you know, like, frame things in such a way that they think it will be, they'll use guilt or charm or, um, you know, flattery for me to do something for them. I mean, I get that as a professional. And, I see through it. And I was like, I'm going to make my decision based on what works for you, what works for me, what will work in the context of our professional relationship. But trying to manipulate me into do something is not going to work. And so um, once you get to that point of realizing that you're being manipulated, um, you are the one in control. You have options, and you only fail at that when you say, I'm not going to exercise my resourcefulness, right? We don't fail for lack of resources. We fail for lack of resourcefulness. And so um, you have options. Once you realize that somebody's um, trying to manipulate you uh, in whatever way, you're in control, because that manipulation will not work. So that's what I call Luskin's golden rule. I don't really know if it's golden, but it does work for me, and it is a rule in my book. So I hope that helps. Again, I am Stephen Luskin, and thank you for joining me tonight. Um, if you have questions, please give me a call. My phone number is on the screen. You can reach me at the email address or through the website. I'll be more than happy to hear from you. And thank you once again for joining me.